One of the greatest dupings of society, one of the greatest mass dupings of society is division. Mm-hmm. That you guys are all different, which is the biggest crap. Do we have different cultures? Do we speak differently? Do we eat foods differently? Yes. But on the basic level of existence, we all want to be safe, secure, happy, fulfilled. None of us want to be poor. None of us want to struggle. None of us want to be sick.
Everybody, what's up and welcome to the first episode of the Evolution Podcast. Today with me today is Ethan T. Heisey. What's up, Ethan?
Good morning.
Yes, hello. People don't see you. Like,
Good morning.
Awesome. Yeah. Awesome. And Mr. Johnson, what's up?
What's going on, gentlemen? Good day to all of you, to all who are listening out there in the world. I hope your life is going well. Hope all is super fantastic. And if it's not, we'll see what we can do about fixing that. Okay. So good day to all.
Awesome. So when we started talking just before we hit record, we kind of talked about how can we make this not so much of a good day for everybody. We're talking about the stock market and everything in the world right now, but I think we'll get to that a bit later because, it's important to kind of talk about things like that. But besides that, the show is all about uplifting you guys, everybody that's listening, and to give you some not only motivation, but to give you practical knowledge, wisdom, and tools to go about your business and life. So, Mr. J, I think the best thing to start is let's talk for a second about the connection of faith and business.
Well, you guys know me. I'm very big into having faith and what does that truly mean? A lot of people use that terminology as spirituality and business. How does these things really play a part in the overall manifestation of that of which we desire? What do we need to do? As far as I'm concerned, and this is just my personal opinion, I do believe this to be factual. Your thoughts are everything. How one thinks, how one feels, what one says about themselves, and particularly really determines the outcome of how their life will go. And so I think it's imperative that you have a strong spiritual background, a strong amount of faith and determination. And I really do believe that these things are crucial, at least for my life. And I believe in a lot of other lives as well, as you progress through life, particularly as you get older, that you start looking at things and viewing things from a little bit of a different lens. And I just think that faith, why don't we rephrase that? I know that faith, determination, confidence, and spiritual understanding are absolute necessity in order for you to have some, in my opinion, long-term success that's worthy of having. So I hope that helps your answer.
Yeah, I mean, definitely in terms of having faith, it's when you're up and coming, having faith is so important. Obviously, sometimes it feels like it's not something we should even consider just as much because we need to work very hard. But there's a balance, right? Because there's faith comes in terms of like believing in what you're doing, but it also comes in a way of attracting. Right. And you're a big believer in attracting.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. So let's talk about attracting for a second.
And let me say this to you also about faith. When we look at the definition of faith, there you have the Webster's Dictionary, then you have the biblical term, if you will. Then many people have their own personal opinions. But if we just look at the scriptural reference, it says this in the great book of Hebrews, chapter 11. It says, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. So what is this simply saying? As I try to convey to people, the most simplest way I can put it is this. Faith is a real thing, just like love, just like warm, fuzzy feelings when you're loving your spouse or your children. You can't see love per se, you feel it, if you will. So faith is a real thing. It is the substance of the matter, if you will, of the thing hoped for. So obviously what you're believing for or have faith for, it is something you do not see.
Right.
Okay, so let us suppose a person is starting a business and they want to do $10 million a year. They're not there yet, so they have to have faith that they can hit that goal. But again, to understand the true definition of faith, faith is a real thing. Faith is the substance or the matter, and everything in our universe consists of matter or energy, if you will, is the substance of the thing hoped for, the evidence of the things not seen. So what is it simply saying? The fact that you believe in what you're doing is what makes it real. This is the greatest thing that people have to learn. There is no outside force, so to speak, saying that you can have this or you can't have that. It is really predicated on what you're thinking, what you're saying. This is very important. For out of the mouth, we can speak life or death over our situation. And bringing all of those elements together so that you truly understand the definition of faith and how it really works in your life. So again, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. And again, in layman's term, it is the fact that you are believing in it that makes it happen. This is very important. Yes.
Yeah. And I think, there's a couple of things that you just mentioned, and I'm looking again to find the practicalities about everything here. And one of them is like, first of all, think accordingly, have proper thoughts. And I think just about that, we can have a few shows alone, because on the Clubhouse rooms that we did, you have one quote, which you said something along the lines of, you must have soldiers armed to the teeth at the front line of your mind to prevent any negative thoughts or self-doubt. And I think that's one thing, thoughts. The second thing is speaking. And speaking is because when we speak out, or anything that we hear, right? When we speak it, we hear it. It comes out of our mouth into our ears. The way that things come into our ears is how we perceive the world. So when we speak it out to the world, we perceive it. And that's the science behind it, basically, because then that external stimulus, which we spoke and then we listened to, is basically the one that now fires up the neurons inside of us. So if we think negative thoughts, which most of the time we do think a lot of things about doubt and what we can't achieve. That's how we were born and raised, to think we can't achieve a lot. And so those fire neurons. And when we speak it out, it's even bigger, because then it comes through our ears as kind of like the reality around us. And then, and that's speaking great things. Like when we ask you, how's your day going? And you're like, super fantastic. That's the way of getting the kind of like even tricking your mind, even if it's not the best day. It's a way of tricking our own mind into believing everything is great. And then therefore making our reality as so.
Well, I would say this, is it even really tricking yourself? You see, I think that what happens, unfortunately, particularly with us as so-called human beings, we're never taught what we are. You're taught that you're a man and, black, white, whatever societal structures that exist. But unfortunately, no one ever really addresses the condition of the so-called human being. What are you? And as this is scientifically proven as well. I'm a big fan of data and facts. As much as I focus on belief, I also have to focus on what I know to be true. And what most people don't understand is the reason there's so much negative talk inside of an individual, or this inner conversation that most people have, it all stems from their childhood. You must understand that most of us are conditioned to fail. And what do I mean by that? Well, you've been told to go to college, get married, have children, and, do all the other things that in our society in which we do. And these things should make you happy.
Become a robot.
Yeah, you should make you happy. But if you are of the mindset of a sheep, meaning you go along to get along, you go along with the masses, you do what the masses do, unfortunately, you will find yourself facing a lot of the problems that the masses face. And so when we start looking at development, when we start looking at changing, or what you said, tricking, it's really, in my opinion, not a matter of tricking anything. It is a matter of believing in that which you state or affirm to what you want to have happen. And if you look at anything is in existence, it all starts with our thoughts first. And that's why I think it's imperative that you have those soldiers at the gate of your mind, because all day long, most likely you are being bombarded with a ton of negative information. If it's war, economic depression, it could be bad traffic, whatever the case might be. It might be having a personal issue with your spouse, but you are constantly being inundated. So you have to develop the ability to guard your mind and filter what thoughts you allow into your mind, because once they rest in the mind and one conceive of it in the mind, you start vibrating on that frequency and drawing back to you what's that, either what you want or what you don't want. And this is not by happenstance. This is the law.
Wait, Mr. J, we don't know what frequency is.
Well, what is frequency? Well, when we look at, I would use frequency in a simple term. How do you feel?
Yeah.
How do you feel? Most people, frequency is very low. And particularly with men,
Mhm.
And why did I say that? Because most men will, if you ask a man, how's he doing? That man's usually going to say, I'm fine or I'm okay. And a man will make it a priority to make sure his wife is okay, his children are okay, even his colleagues or his coworkers or his employees. But when it comes to his own frequency and how he is feeling, you will find that a lot of times you find them exhausted, you find them burnt out, depressed, oppressed, indecisive, uncomfortable, filled with anxiety. So again, vibrating is really how do you feel? And when we start looking about how do you feel, I can assure you how you're feeling is playing a huge factor in what's happening in manifestation in your life.
Yeah.
And this is the one thing that a lot of us don't talk about as coaches and spiritual advisors. We don't talk about how do you feel. We always tell people what to do, but never address how do they feel.
Yeah.
So that's a huge factor in that as well.
And just to say, like, frequency, like your frequency, just if you want to put a term to it, or like the definition of it, it's kind of like the emotional state that you're in. And the reason that is important is because, and just that's me playing off of what I know, at least, you know, that whatever state you're in right now, it doesn't matter. Like throughout the day, you're in different states, and you're gonna pass throughout different frequencies. But how, you know, how you notice like some people are way more successful than you, and you know, and so that's how, like, and I'm saying that to the listeners. Think about, like, I can say for my instance, I sat down with a friend who's like a multimillionaire, and that friend had a huge villa, like in a very nice part of Israel. And he's like, yeah, I just wanted to move to Tel Aviv for a while, so I rented out my villa. And I'm like, oh, nice, wow. For how much did you rent your villa? And he's like, oh, that's about like $12K a month. And $12K a month, that's a lot of rent. Like, you know, it's like more than, I don't know, like almost 8 or 9 times what I pay for my mortgage right now. And it's like, who pays that on a monthly? Who has the, and from all of a sudden I go into lack, right? That's my frequency, lack. And he's like, he's talking to me over, it's like some kind of a cup of coffee. And he's like, oh no, it's just, you know, it's just 12K. What, you know? And for me, I was like, wow. And after that session, I was talking to another friend of mine, and we were kind of like walking around just after the masterminding, and we were like, okay, so let's just break it down for a second. Why were we in shock when we heard someone just says 12K to spend on, or, you know, on his rent every month without a worry? It's just because that person is now different than us, flesh and bones, right? But that person has built something and is operating in, I would say, cruising at a higher frequency than probably what we are on a regular basis. Like, and I think most successful people, also you, Mr. J, like, are cruising on a higher frequency. And the more you can cruise on a higher frequency and more often, like, right, because we sometimes cruise higher, but we drop down very quickly. But some people that manage to cruise on a higher and pick themselves up on a higher and higher and stay there for a longer amount of time, that's the people that have more success in life and in business. And so that's why frequency matters. I just wanted to stress that out on my end. So everybody listening right now, think about people that are super successful that you always say to yourself, oh, I'm never going to be as successful as they are. Well, you can. Like, it's just a matter of, like, you know, it is a matter of a couple of things, but one of them is frequency and emotional state management.
Well, I didn't want to chime in. Ethan, are you going to chime in here, or you just want me to go ahead and address that?
No, you know, I was just thinking about something with a previous statement about faith to be getting to relate to this. It's amazing to some of Saji and then Mr. Johnson, you guys have both achieved pretty incredible things, and some things that people will never achieve in their lifetimes. To relate to that, you guys were talking about faith earlier, and a quote that I heard was that faith allows us to see the invisible, to believe in the incredible, which permits us to receive what the masses call impossible. And I think that's when we get to the part where we say, wow, what Saji and Mr. Johnson are doing is almost impossible, or to pay a $13,000 a month rent, how is that even possible? It all starts with that faith, that foundation, I believe. But that was my thought on that. Turn back to you guys.
No, well, you know, I would agree with that. And I would just say one state of mind. You know, I come from a very humble background. I wasn't born with a great deal of money at all. We were very impoverished as young people, filled with a lot of love in the family, but nevertheless, there were some economic challenges. And what I've learned from being an executive in some of the most largest companies in the world is that state of mind is everything. You know, your thoughts make you rich or poor. It is just that simple. And I would say to anyone who is listening, no matter what circumstances or challenges you might be facing, even if you might not have high self-esteem, high self-worth, whatever it might be, that anything can be changed. And there is no law stating that once you watch this podcast, that once it's over, you have to remain the same. You can listen to the information that's conveyed to you and see what practical applications you can institute to where you can start developing some tangible results down the road. So again, faith, state of mind, vibrating. And I wanted to say this too. One could be vibrating at a very low frequency, believe it or not. And this might sound counterproductive and still obtain success. We say, well, Mr. Johnson, how can that be? Well, there are many individuals who we know are very successful as far as actors and actresses and things of that nature. And they're vibrating at a very high success rate. They might have a very booming Hollywood career and they're making a ton of money, but their marriage is failing. So even though I'm vibrating at a high rate in success in one area of my life, I don't see the benefits of that in one area of my life. And so when I talk about vibrating or how do you feel, it is more of a holistic approach, not just how do you feel financially, but how are you mentally? How are you emotionally? How are you spiritually? How are you as an individual? And a lot of the things that I like to deal with my mentees about are things that are not necessarily coming up in any particular business course, or even from a spiritual perspective, because even with one being told to do affirmations and things of that nature, if you guys always notice, the first thing Mr. Johnson asks is, how are you doing? How do you feel? And what's going on with you? Right. So those things are equally as important.
Yeah, I mean, that's so important. Ethan, how do you manage your frequency on day-to-day level?
I actually had a question on that in a minute for both of you as well after this. But for me, it's about my attention and focus, and where am I putting that? And it's really just my excitement for what drives me on what I do. That I'm trying to figure out for myself. I don't really have a good answer for that, but I was going to ask you both. To have a high vibration, to resonate on another frequency, how do you do that? Is it just thinking about those thoughts that get you there, or is it just having excitement and energy for life and what you're doing? Where does it come from?
You want to take that, Sagi?
I can take it for myself as, just being a mentee of you, Mr. J. Like that's what I'm learning right now from you. And that's what I'm also, I have my friend, Gal, who's also like I'm masterminding with all the time. And we're like really talking a lot lately about state management, what we call state management. How do you change your frequency? I think once you understand how to do that. So I have a routine for myself. When I feel, first of all, it's about being aware. I think it's developing mindfulness. Nobody can do anything without mindfulness. Like you have to develop mindfulness, and mindfulness can come on the day-to-day level by noticing everything around you and being in the present moment. The way to really get it going for you is meditate. Once you meditate, that's kind of like the practice for the battle, which practice is, is harder than the battle. Hopefully later, if you practice hard, and that's meditation. It's really, really hard to sit down for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, not, do a thing. So I really recommend for anybody who's not yet in it to download an app like Insight Timer or Calm or Headspace or whatnot, and meditate for 10 minutes at least, right, every day. And that's a practice. And now the battle, itself is in the day-to-day, because, it's even like practicing it proactively when you're driving somewhere. Just stop for a second, say driving, driving, driving. Be aware for a second that you're driving. When you're mad, say, that's when you start to understand, okay, I'm mad. That's when you start to identify the situations or your emotional state. So first of all is mindfulness. That's the first part of it. Without mindfulness, we can't really identify our emotional state, and therefore we can't change it. Now that we identified it, we need to have a routine in order to switch it around and uplift yourself. And for me, and Mr. J, please add on top of that, I would like to learn from you definitely. It's like I do gratitude, first of all. I'm like, when I'm in a poor emotional state and I identify that. So sorry, before that, I let the feeling in. I let the feeling, I give it space for a second. Sometimes identifying what caused it is enough to let it go, like, and get back to your regular state. But I can say that in a lot of, you always need to uplift yourself to the next higher phase. So I do that with, now I start to, say gratitude to myself, kind of like, man, what a beautiful day. Or I can't believe, like, I'm looking at my child across the living room and I'm like, wow, what a beautiful child I have. Like, I'm so blessed. And like, I just start to now recall everything that either I have in life or I achieved. And David Goggins also calls it the cookie jar, where you can take up, like, have each of us have their own cookie jars where we can pick up cookies and look at them and like, oh, we achieved this, or we had this in life, and thank so much. We can be thankful for that. So gratitude is one. Second of all is I think about I visualize my end goal sometimes. It's like, not my end goal, but kind of like we each need a vision and need to know where we're going. So I visualize my future self. And that really helps me also to kind of like understand my future self alone just will vibrate on a higher frequency. So that's sometimes enough to get me into that frequency. Besides that, that's pretty much what I have, Mr. J.
Well, I would say this: when people ask, how do you vibrate on a certain high frequency? Well, there's an elementary answer, and then there's a more deep, profound answer, in my opinion. The elementary answer is simply, hey, you want to feel good. Think about things that make you happy. Think about things that bring you joy. Hopefully it raises your vibration and you feel better. That's a very simplistic answer. A more deep, profound answer is to ask yourself, why am I alive? Why do I exist? And why do I feel the way that I feel? Why do I feel this way? As I often share with my wife, we've been married 27 years this year, I would ask her, particularly early in our marriage, she might feel a certain way. And I would ask her, well, why do you feel that way? And what most people don't understand is that the reason a lot of us vibrate at a low frequency, it's not because we're necessarily low vibrating spirits or souls. It's just that we've never been taught to raise our vibration in the appropriate fashion. This is done by a great gift that you have in your mind through your imagination. All of us have the ability to see whatever we want. I mean, and it's very unfortunate because we have it and it's been taken for granted, and people really don't pay attention to it in the way that it needs to be paid attention to. The power of your thoughts, in which house your imagination. And I'm not talking about your brain. Your brain is done to figure out calculations. I'm talking about your mind, where your ideas and things proceed from. And when you understand self-image, how do you see yourself? Is really in my opinion, the question that needs to be answered in reference to vibrating on a higher level. For example, if you do not see yourself as well, healthy, stable, emotionally sound, have a certain level of emotional intelligence, if you don't see yourself as well, it is very hard for you to portray that image or to radiate that type of energy or to vibrate on that frequency. Now, not all the times. There's not one way fits all. I want to make that crystal clear. What I'm saying is not necessarily the gospel for all people, but in general, for the masses, it seems to apply nonetheless. When you have a good self-image about yourself, how do you see yourself? This is in my opinion, the foundation of vibrating at a high frequency, because most people do not think highly of themselves. They do not. The woman might say, I'm not pretty enough, or I'm overweight. The guy might say, I'm not tall enough, or I don't have a nice car or make money, or whatever the case might be. And we start telling ourselves all this negative talk, which in turn affects our high vibration mindset, if you will. And it all becomes somewhat of a self-fulfilling prophecy. It is simple to change your vibration. And what I'm talking about, it's not motivation, because motivation will fade, but inspiration, where it comes from internal, it's inside of you. And the way you do that, believe it or not, is number one, you got to love yourself. In particular, I say this to men. Men are not taught to love themselves. They're taught to love others. They're taught to love their wives and their children. But they're never taught to love themselves outside of going to the gym and thinking that if I get big muscles, that's loving myself. But I think that when you look at loving yourself, forgiving your past wrongs, your past mistakes, anything that you might have done that you might be ashamed of, or things that have happened to you that maybe still bother you, you have to almost, in a sense, have a cleansing of the soul and of the mind for true high vibration. for true high vibration. Now you can vibrate at a certain level, and you can achieve some things with that. I can't say that you're not, because nothing is impossible. But if you want profound, long lasting, high vibrating, you said, Sagi, you said earlier, Mr. J, you're just cruising. Well, how did I get to this altitude in my career? It's simple. I had to get rid of the excess baggage.
Right.
My plane would never have taken off to the heights that it could if I carried a bunch of guilt, fear, unbelief, doubt, and worry with me. And so by letting those things go, those things serve me well.
I love that. I actually have something to add on top of that, which really connects to just 2 days ago, I interviewed Dr. Ryan Gottfredson on my podcast on Commit First. So the interview, like Dr. Ryan Gottfredson is the guy who wrote Success Mindsets, which is a great book about the 4 types of mindsets. You have, like, everybody talks about growth versus fixed, but anyways, from here to there, now he's publishing another book about what he calls vertical development. And have you guys heard that term before?
No, I haven't.
No. So it's basically like it goes along so much of what you're speaking to is like, but at the beginning is like, it's in a way we can put it into frequencies, but basically like everybody has their own level of vertical development, and some are cruising on what he calls like 1.0, which is to just feel safe, comfortable, and to feel that they belong. That's what they're looking for. It's like the most of the people in the world. I think the researchers have found that 65% of the population are cruising at that altitude of just wanting to feel safe, like they belong and that they're comfortable. And then there's the 2.0, which 2.0 people, they are on about 34%. 34% of the people in the world, they're cruising on advancement and standing out and getting ahead. And those are the entrepreneurs, those are, kind of like the people who are really like do, like hustle mode or getting a lot done, really, really productive people, most of the business gurus and everything like that. And then there's the 1%, that their mission in life right now, or what they're all about, is about contribution, adding value, and lifting others, not themselves, but others. And that's like 3.0, and that's the vertical development. And each of us are kind of like cruising, like frequencies up and down, but some of us are most of their time on one of those levels. And he said that in order to get to 3.0, like, because most people, like, entrepreneurs at least probably listen to this podcast, and people in the personal development world are on 2.0 already, at least, right? And or getting on the verge from 1.0 to 2.0, but getting to really like 3.0, and that's what it was talking about. You really have to get rid of excess baggage, and you have to find the traumas in your childhood and cure them and forgive people in your life. And that's how you really get to 3.0. And he was talking about a process called EMDR, which is a process of finding past traumas through some kind of, process and curing them. And he said he went through something like that, and that's something that I really like. 2 days ago, I talked to him about it, and exactly what he said, Mr. J, like you have to,
I've never even heard of him, but I've been doing this for quite some time, and I've helped a lot of people, and I find that there are certain commonalities among all races of people, among all genders. There are certain commonalities that it's just so blaringly obvious. It is just amazing to me that people just don't address these issues. And a lot of our problems are coming from our childhood, how you were raised, what you were told, what you think about yourself. And so when you're an adult, you do your very best not to pass these negative traits down to your children or even express them yourself. But unfortunately, whether one calls it the subconscious mind, I prefer to use the God mind. These things will come to the surface, if you will, if they're not addressed. So I applaud you for seeking out that knowledge. What the gentleman shared with you was the truth. You must forgive people. When I forgave, listen, I'm going to share a little bit of my heart, guys, real quick. My mother and father, my mother's passed on, God rest her soul. I love my mom dearly. And my father, he's still alive, and he's doing well for himself. And hopefully my dad will see this. Hey, Pop, how are you? But the fact of the matter is there were some very big challenges in my family, from drug use and abuse to alcoholism. And when you're young, you're just trying to deal the best way you can. You be at school, your friends, whatever the case might be. You get older, you're hoping you're making the right decisions, but then you start facing some of those past traumas. When I learned to forgive my family, I really did. I forgave my mother. I forgave my father. And I really did truly forgive them. They did the best they could with what they knew. What are parents except older children who hoping that they're making the right decisions? But when I let that baggage go, I tell you, man, it was like a weight was lifted off of me. And it freed me from a lot of fear, a lot of doubt about myself. I had a big fear of rejection. I didn't want to be told no. So much so that I developed a saying that no means next. You know what I mean? But when you can embrace your inner child, if you will, for lack of a better term, and face it. You have to face it. This is another thing. People, you said earlier, 65% of people just want to feel safe and secure. Here you go. They just want to feel safe.
Yep.
Notice safe and secure, never happy. Just safe and secure.
Right.
But what kind of life is that? You want to be safe, secure, and fulfilled. You want to find your purpose. And a lot of us lack that emotional fortitude, not because we're not worthy of it, simply because we don't know how to attain it, or more importantly, we not have dealt with issues that are really coming from our childhood and how we were raised.
Yeah.
Yes.
100%.
I'll tell you something else interesting too, Sagi. You would be amazed, brother, that how much we all have in common. One of the greatest dupings of society, one of the greatest mass dupings of society is division. Mm-hmm. That you guys are all different, which is the biggest crap. Do we have different cultures? Do we speak differently? Do we eat foods differently? Yes. But on the basic level of existence, we all want to be safe, secure, happy, fulfilled. None of us want to be poor. None of us want to struggle. None of us want to be sick.
Yep.
Poverty is just above sick and dead. These are the last things people want to be. And so when we want to make an impact on the culture, we want to make an impact in Israel, here in the United States, all over the world. There's so many people going through things. What is truly the message Mr. Johnson's wanting to convey to them? Man, faith and hope and belief in yourself. There might be somewhat of an antiquated concept, but it doesn't mean that they don't operate. And when one can develop a sense of self, and a sense of self, who you are, not who your parents are, or your brothers and sisters, or even your friends, but who are you? And if you can live in that truth and express that truth and believe in that truth, remember this, beloved, all who are listening to me, whatever you believe either will become true or is true. According to your faith, be it unto you. It is done unto you as you believe. In other words, in the way that you believe, in the way that you think. So if you believe something to be difficult, arduous, hard, complicated, by definition, because you think that way, it must become that way. This, my friend, is the law, or one of the laws of creation. So just wanted to share that.
Great. Can't hear you, Sagi, but another question for you. We're talking a lot about vibration. And and we talked about the 3 levels of Sagi mentioned. In your opinion, Mr. Johnson, for elite performers and high achievers, is it possible to stay on that high, the 3rd level of vibrations, etc., or do you sometimes bounce back into the comfort zone?
I think that it depends on the individual. What my belief is that, particularly with young guys such as you and Sagi, what I want for you guys is to continuously evolve. You must evolve. And so can you stay in that frequency? It really depends. This is going to sound weird, but it really depends on your thoughts. You see, I hear a lot of young people say, speak things into existence. I hear that said often now, that you can speak something into existence. Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Well, if I'm speaking something into existence, I should only speak that which I desire. So can a person stay at a high frequency if they're continuously focusing on that? Yes, but I believe even as they evolve, it's like a great baseball player or a great basketball player. We have LeBron James or Michael Jordan. They hit what's called a peak. Mm-hmm. They peak. This is the best that they're going to be. And then from there, what starts to happen? Their skills start to decline. Yeah. Now, and what's declining is not their mental capacity, but their physical capacity to do what they're doing. So then now you hear the athlete say it's more mental than what? Physical. So even though he is still evolving, the way he or she is thinking is what's changing, and it enables them to still perform at a somewhat of a high level. But eventually, Father Time is undefeated. Eventually, they wind up stepping away from that, and they still can vibrate high, just in a different arena. So again, I will leave you. I don't want to leave you with this, but I'll say this to you guys: guard your heart, which is a metaphoric term referencing your mind. Guard your mind with all diligence, for out of your mind are the issues of your life. So when we understand these spiritual principles, you are literally creating your reality based on what you think, what you say, and how you feel, i.e. the term mind, body, spirit, so to speak.
Love it. Love it. Yeah. So I want to stop for a second. Everybody who's listening right now, guys, if you got value out of this, please pause this right now, take a snapshot on your phone or whatever device you're listening or watching this from, and share it on your social media for a second and tag us, because we want to know that you're getting this message. We want to know that you're getting value out of this. And the second thing, just to ask right now, I know it's like in the middle of the podcast, but still, I think it's a great way to say, hey guys, please rate us on Apple Podcasts. This is a new show, first episode out, and we really would love your feedback and your comments and specifically formally on Apple Podcasts. That's your way of saying I got value from this. So if you can go to Apple Podcasts, leave a review, or on Spotify, if you're listening on Spotify, you can rate this show. That would mean a ton to us. So I just wanted to include that, and now we can continue. I think, like the topic of how much is entrepreneurship is a spiritual game is such an important topic to discuss, and that's probably what we're going to uncover slowly but surely here on this on the show. And maybe that's a good thing to also mention, guys. There's a way to leave to ask questions, follow-up questions. If you have any follow-up questions for the show, so we have a form ready and out. I can't really give you the address yet because we don't have the direct URL at this specific moment, but I can tell you that if you go to, you know what, I'll actually upload it right now to, by the time this goes out. Right now, specifically for this episode, probably will change. You can go to sagishriver.com, or sorry, commitfirst.com/ask Mr. J. Just in one word, ask Mr. J. Just go to commitfirst.com/ask Mr. J. You'll be able to find this form where you can ask follow-up questions, and therefore we can answer, on the next episode. It's just important for us to keep the interaction with you guys. So in terms of like picking up the conversation on operating and cruising on a higher altitude, then we understand that we need to focus and on making that shift into a higher altitude, and we also understand that in order to do that, we need to go out of our own way, right? We need to get out of our own head and break limiting beliefs. So one is like, do you have any tips on how to do that? And two, you mentioned your past traumas or how you forgave your parents and stuff. How did you do it? Would love to ask.
Well, I prayed about it, to be honest with you. I'm a man of prayer. I believe in God. I'm not trying to, persuade anyone to believe what I believe by any stretch of the imagination. However, I found that prayer, meditation, again, self-love, self-care, because realistically, me not forgiving them was only poisoning myself. To be totally honest with you, it wasn't doing, not that I can't speak for them. I don't know what they were thinking. I just knew what I was experiencing, what I was feeling as their child, as their son. But once I learned that I had to take accountability for my own actions and my own thoughts, those things played a major role in the overall development and progression that I would find myself to make. I don't know what else to say outside of that. But,
I love them. Saying personally on my end that I don't have any specific traumas or issues. I had two great parents. Obviously, they were not perfect. So I'm kind of I'm trying to understand what are my traumas. What shaped me. And
I think when we look at the word drama or trauma or whatever the case might be, I mean, it's different for everybody. And by no means was my childhood all bad. By no means. There was a lot of love and things like that. And everybody's experience is different. I think more importantly, what we want to look at as we peel back the onion of an individual is really just ask themselves, what would make you happy? And if you haven't had any past experiences that might have been detrimental to your upbringing, good for you. That's great for anybody. No one wants to experience unnecessary suffering or trouble, by no means. And when we do have those things happen, we just want to learn as best we can from it and hopefully don't repeat it again. But I would just encourage anyone who's listening to this podcast, you said, Mr. J, what tips can you give us? Tip number one, first of all, if you are alive, there is hope. If you are alive, some people do not value just their life itself, and it's unfortunate because life is very difficult to create and very easy to take. It's like a building, they build these huge high rises, and the high rise might take 3 years to build, but they can tear it down in 30 seconds. In 30 seconds of explosion, the whole building is gone. It took 3 years to build this thing, and in 30 seconds, it is gone. I find that same with a lot of people. You can have someone build themselves up and then have a past trauma experience happen, and all your effort and work is destroyed. So I think it's imperative that if a person is experiencing trauma, they might want to look for therapy. You might want to look for great mentorship, great coaching, anything that will bring you out of that state of mind. Now, what are you going to do? The first thing, as you stated earlier, is gratitude. Now, many people might say, how can I be grateful when I'm poor? How can I be grateful if I'm sick? How can I be grateful if my marriage is on the brink of getting divorced, or my children don't speak to me, or whatever the case might be? I totally get it. I'm not insensitive, nor am I saying one should not feel what they're experiencing. However, one always has a choice. You have a choice on what you think and what you feel. Now, this will take practice. A man must learn to rule, or a woman, his or her own spirit. This is very difficult with peer pressure, advertising, and marketing. You're always being continuously influenced on what to buy, what to wear, what to say, where to go, where to invest your money. Everything is influential. And this is why it's imperative that you have those soldiers at the gate of your mind, and only allow in your mind that would benefit you, that what you would feel as though would benefit you. Now, how are you going to do this? You're going to start one day at a time. There's no magic bullet here. There's no instant gratification, regardless of Instagram. That's not the reality of the world in which we exist. The fact of the matter is, you did not get in a situation overnight, and you will not get out of it overnight. It will take time, effort, and discipline for you to change. And all that's well and good, because all you really need is a spirit that is willing to change. And if you are willing to change, I can assure you, if you continue to listen to great podcasts, if you continue to listen to great information, only things that are going to be beneficial to you, and you should never have ill towards another. As we further along these podcasts, what is Mr. J going to touch on with a lot of you is your spirit. You must understand that you are here for a reason, that you've been given gifts that no one possesses in the world but you. And it is your job and your responsibility to find it. That is the ultimate quest. That's the journey. That's the expedition that you're on, the journey of your life. In your life, you will want to be happy and vibrate at a high frequency and all these wonderful things we talk about. But unfortunately, many of us do not do that. Not because, again, there's anything wrong with you, but you've never been taught to do so. And even employing these certain principles, they might sound foreign to you. And do they even believe that they work? Remember this, as I tell all of my mentees, you are more powerful than you realize. Your mind is the gateway to the ethereal realm. This is why you dream at night. And when you dream, you go places and you experience things and you come back to this so-called reality. It is all real, and it is all happening through you. Your life is happening through you and to you. You are basically the lens, or the avatar, if you will, and mind, body, spirit, soul, energy, faith, all of these components make up what we know as a so-called human being. So how do we do it? We do it one step at a time, one person at a time. But remember to love yourself, most important, particularly my guys, to love yourself, gentlemen and ladies, and forgive. And if you have nothing to forgive others for, great. And if you do, forgive them, put the baggage down, move forward with excitement and with passion and with commitment and good energy, and all that stuff matters, man. It really does, man. It really does. If you're somber and humdrum, and you're not going to get very far. But if you keep your passion high, especially in the midst when you don't want to do it, here's another one of my secrets. It's not I feel great all the time. Who does? I'm 54 years old, you get backaches, body aches, whatever. But no matter how I might be feeling at that particular time, gratitude and gratefulness. So again, to piggyback on what you said earlier, Sagi, being grateful for what you have, I couldn't have said it any better, my friend. That is so important that we are grateful. and that we are thankful for our life. And here, listen, here's something else for you young people to consider. If you can literally speak things into existence, well, if you're speaking something into existence, who the hell is listening to you? That's the question that I have to young people. Most people won't talk about God. They'll say the universe. It's amazing to me. But I'm wondering, if you're speaking something into existence, if you're speaking to something, then shouldn't something on the other side of that be listening to you? Now, that's the question. Who is listening to you? And if they're listening to you and they bring what you want, what you're speaking into this realm, then who do you thank on that side? You see, there are so many things here that are never really talked about, that are the most profound questions that needs to be asked of all human beings upon this planet. Why the hell are you here? What are you doing here? And what are you supposed to do? And why is it that Sagi and Ethan and Mr. Johnson have this passion to help people? Why do you want to help? Why can't you just be a greedy money grabber and go out there and take all the money from people and do bad things? You see, because I believe in the word predestined, predetermined. I could ramble for hours, guys. Let me stop. I don't want to get off subject here. Believe, be grateful, have a great attitude. Your attitude is going to determine your altitude. I hope that helps.
I love that. And I think we can wrap it up with that. And I would also want to have maybe one session, one of those future episodes about gaining clarity of vision. Because I think like one of the things, like you asked, why am I here? What am I supposed to do? A lot of us struggle with that question. What are we supposed to do? We haven't found that thing. We are now struggling entrepreneurs. We're, trying one thing, it's failing, trying another thing, it's not really that, we're not really happy with our current business. We want to switch to doing something different. So I think we can also talk about that and on the show, like help on how to find clarity. I bet you have a lot on what to.
I'd like to say this. We're going to bring a lot of great discussions to this podcast. I just hope that I encourage everyone to listen, to share it with your families and your friends. I'm sure it will give you value. But more importantly, to really listen, to really listen. And if it resonates with you, apply these principles. They will help you. I'm not telling you what I believe. I'm telling you what I know. So from my guy Sagi to my guy Ethan, these are great young men, extraordinary businessmen, and they're good guys. Forget the money in the business. I know a lot of guys want to, and I do very well. And that's cool, and it's wonderful, and it's great. You can buy you some groceries, you can buy you a steak and some Fruity Pebbles and Pop-Tarts. Okay, super fantastic. But more importantly than that, they're good men. They're good guys. And if anything, you say, well, Mr. J, you're our mentor. Well, what would Mr. J say about those guys? These are great young men, and it is a privilege and an honor to be with them. It is a privilege and an honor to mentor them, because if you hope you can understand this, when I find the pleasure of leaving this planet, for the seeds that I've planted in them, in one sense, I shall live forever. And so they represent a certain level of immortality to me because of the things that I try to place in their spirit. So these guys mean the world to me. So just wanted to throw that out there, Sagi.
Thanks so much. I think, goes the, same way. It's like we're
I'm sure.
Definitely grateful to have you as our mentor. And I'm
sure it does, guys.
And I think, going back to faith and spirituality and what you attract and vibrating at some kind of frequency, hey, that's what got us to meet you. And
that's exactly right.
So,
and Sagi, I got to say this before we go. Guys, listen, I really believe I'm sitting here in my office. I have chills on my arms right now. I am telling you, I really believe and know that this is going to affect the world. All we have to do is be consistent and give it time to grow. Give it time. As you plant a seed, listen, all of you out there listening to me on this podcast, whatever you're planting in your consciousness, remember, your thoughts are the seeds. Your mind is the soil. You water those seeds with your words. And then any tree you plant, any plant you plant, you must plant it in the ground first and then give it time to germinate. And in time, it will take root, just like this podcast. In time, it will take root. Then in time, it will grow strong. Then in time, it will become fruitful. And then when it's fruitful, we can feed so many more people. So all of you who are out there listening to us, please support us. Please share it. Share it with your friends and family. It's the Evolution Podcast. We're really going to make an impact on the world. Mr. Johnson, Sagi Schreiber, Ethan P. Heisey, my guys, looking for us to make a huge impact on the world, and I hope you'll be part of it.
Boom, mic drop, everybody. Thank you so much, and see you on the next episode.
Thanks, guys. Take care.